The dissemination of stories regarding unsolved missing person cases or murders is of utmost importance for a multitude of reasons. The primary purpose is to ensure that the cases remain prominent in the public consciousness, which can potentially result in new information or leads that may facilitate the resolution of the cases. Moreover, these narratives can help draw attention to more pressing issues, such as the necessity for better support mechanisms for the families of missing persons or more effective investigative strategies. It is also a means of commemorating the victims and keeping their memory alive, which is particularly crucial when justice is not attained. Ultimately, through the sharing of these stories, we can heighten awareness about the frequency of these occurrences and the significance of continuing efforts toward their resolution. Greetings, my name is Nix, and welcome to Into the Dark. True Crime Stories, a novel video series that takes you on a voyage through some of the most perplexing and unresolved disappearances and homicides in the United States. Join me as we scrutinize the evidence, theories, and impact of these cases on the families and communities involved. We will delve deeper into what happened and probe the reasons why these cases remain unresolved to this day. From small towns to large cities, we will illuminate the darkest corners of the country in pursuit of the truth. So join our fellow fireflies as we explore the mysteries of the shadows and venture deeper into the dark. The disappearance of Dulce Maria Chavez. 3 years after she mysteriously vanished from a park, the family of a missing New Jersey girl is still wrought by pain, but hopeful that she will be found alive. Dulce Maria Chavez, then 5 years old, disappeared from a park in Bridgeton, a small Latino-majority city surrounded by one of the most rural areas of the state, on September 16 of 2019. Despite massive manhunts yielding no results, investigators say they believe the girl may still alive. It's very hard to wake up every day and think, my God, Dulce is still gone. Noe Malavespurez, the girl's mother, said in an interview with NBC 10 sister station Telemundo 62. Authorities believe Dulce was abducted as she played with her 3-year-old brother and her 8-year-old niece. Her mother had been watching the kids from a car when the suspected kidnapper struck. Each child had an ice cream in hand as they ran toward the playground, Malavespurez told NBC 10. About 10 minutes later, the mother saw the 3-year-old boy upset and crying, his ice cream on the ground, and his sister nowhere to be found. The boy pointed behind some building, saying his sister went that way, Chavez said, adding that she initially thought the girl was playing hide and seek. However, Dulce never turned up despite massive multi-agency and community-led searches. Investigators think Dulce may have been taken by a man who had been near the park on the day of her disappearance, and they believe he may have driven off in a red van. They described him as a light-skinned, possibly Hispanic man, standing between 5'6" and 5'8" with a thin build and acne on his face. The search for the girl has not ceased and has spanned from western states all the way to Mexico, where the Federal Bureau of Investigation said Dulce's father resides and has cooperated with authorities. Last year, authorities released aged, progressed photos depicting what Dulce may have looked like at 7 years old. The Cumberland County Prosecutor's Office said investigators have conducted hundreds of interviews over the last 3 years. The office on Thursday said tips continue to come in, and that, in the absence of evidence of Dulce's demise, investigators hold out hope that she is alive. Ever since Dulce Maria disappeared, every day has been very difficult, because every day I wait for someone to say where my granddaughter is, grandmother Noema Perez said. Anyone with information on Dulce's whereabouts is asked to call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST 843-5678, the Bridgeton Police Department at 1-856-451-0033, or the FBI at 1-800-225-5324. Anonymous tips can also be submitted online to the Cumberland County Prosecutor's Office. The death of Timothy Wiltsey. Timothy William Wiltsey, otherwise known as Timmy, was a 5-year-old boy from South Amboy, New Jersey, who disappeared on May 25, 1991, from a carnival in nearby Sayreville. His mother, Michelle Ledzinski, reported him missing to the police. Despite extensive searches of the park where the carnival was held, Wiltsey was not found. Nearly 11 months later, in April 1992, his remains were discovered across the Raritan River in the marshlands of Edison, near an office park where Ledzinski had previously worked. Ledzinski's account of her son's disappearance changed within a month of his disappearance, and her lack of emotion when publicly discussing the case made her a suspect in the eyes of the police. This perception intensified later in the decade when she was convicted of staging her own kidnapping, and then, several years later, of stealing a laptop from a former employer. Although prosecutors did not bring charges against her until the 2010s, she was eventually arrested in Florida in 2014. Due to the decomposition of Wiltse's remains, the cause of his death could not be determined, and it was unclear when anyone other than Ledzinski had last seen him. Middlesex County prosecutors believed that a blanket found near the body was one that babysitters had seen in Ledzinski's house while Wiltse was alive. After a trial in 2016, during which the jury foreman was dismissed for conducting independent research, Ledzinski was convicted and sentenced to 30 years in prison without parole. Although she appealed the decision, her conviction was upheld. In 2021, the New Jersey Supreme Court heard Ledzinski's case. The Chief Justice recused himself, and the remaining judges deadlocked, leaving her most recent appeal standing. However, the court invoked a rarely used rule to allow a rehearing with another judge, temporarily designated as a justice to hear the case. And at the end of the year, a narrow majority vacated her conviction due to insufficient evidence for a reasonable jury to convict her. The murder of Gary Grant, Jr. On January 12, 1984, 7-year-old Gary Grant, Jr. had the day off from school due to a teacher's conference. He lived with his mother, May, after his parents separated a year earlier. That morning, Gary told his mother he had an appointment in the afternoon, but he did not say with whom. Gary left home at noon, telling May that he would return before dark. However, he did not show up for dinner, and May became worried. She went to 2 girls that were friends with Gary to ask if they had seen him, but they had not. By Friday, there was still no sign of Gary, and the police started an investigation. Gary's father, Detective Gary Grant Sr., who worked for the Atlantic City, New Jersey police, took part in the search. On Saturday, Gary's body was found in a vacant lot near his home. He had been beaten to death, and a short length of heavy pipe, believed to be the murder weapon, was found nearby. The investigation began with detectives tracing the victim's final hours and talking to those who knew him best. Carl Mason, a mentally challenged 12-year-old with an IQ of 65, known as Boo, was a good friend of Gary and often played with him. Though Boo was 5 years older than Gary, he was smaller in height and weight. Detectives learned that Boo had been with Gary on the day of his murder, but Boo initially denied it. Later, he acknowledged being with Gary at the crime scene and admitted hitting him with a pipe. Detectives drew up a confession based on the interrogation, but Boo signed it only after being told he would be allowed to go home if he admitted to the crime. He was charged with murder and sent to a juvenile detention center. However, 2 polygraph tests showed that he answered truthfully when he said he did not kill Gary Grant, Jr. A month after Boo was arrested, a hearing was held to determine whether his confession was admissible in court. The charges against Boo Mason were dropped, and the police never found another viable suspect. 2 years later, on January 4, 1986, a vandal painted a message on a wall near Gary's home, saying, "I killed little Gary Grant, Jr." However, the killer was never identified or caught. The mysterious death of Jeanette De Palma. Jeanette De Palma was a 16-year-old American teenager who went missing on August 7, 1972 in Springfield Township, Union County, New Jersey. She told her mother that she was going to take a train to a friend's house, but did not arrive. Her parents filed a missing person report with the Springfield Police Department the following day. 6 weeks later, on September 19th, De Palma's remains were found atop a cliff inside Springfield's Howdale Quarry after a local dog brought her decomposing right forearm and hand back to its owner. De Palma's remains were surrounded by a series of strange and possibly occult objects. The most commonly agreed upon account states that the remains were found inside a coffin-shaped perimeter of fallen branches and logs, and inside this perimeter were several small makeshift wooden crosses. Some Springfield residents later claimed that De Palma's remains were found lying on a pentagram, surrounded by mutilated animal remains. Law enforcement authorities have denied that this was true. The body was found on a cliff known to locals for several decades as the Devil's Teeth. An autopsy could not reveal a cause of death, but the coroner suspected that strangulation was the cause of death. The Union County Prosecutor's Office treated the case as an unsolved homicide. Investigators received a tip regarding a homeless man living in the woods near the quarry. This man was known to locals simply as Red. and it was alleged that he fled his campsite in the woods shortly after De Palma went missing. While this lead initially looked promising, the Union County Prosecutor's Office ultimately decided that Red had nothing to do with De Palma's death. Due to a lack of tips from the public, along with inconsistent stories told to the police by her family, friends, and peers, the case eventually went cold, despite rumors and innuendo offered by Springfield police regarding De Palma possibly dying as the result of a drug overdose. No drug paraphernalia was found on, near, or around her body, and she was not known by friends or family to have used any recreational or prescription drugs other than occasionally smoking marijuana socially. De Palma's autopsy report makes no mention of the possibility of a drug overdose, and medical examiner Bernard Threnberg went on record stating he suspected strangulation as the cause of death, as he could not rule it out during the autopsy of her remains. In 2021, an organization named Justice for Jeanette De Palma is dedicated to keeping her memory alive and continues to look for clues, even as the case approaches the half-century mark. The case has become a matter of significant controversy due to coverage in Weird NJ magazine and in the 2015 book, Death on the Devil's Teeth. The Clinton Avenue Five. The Clinton Avenue Five is a case that involves the disappearance of 5 young men on August 20, 1978 in Newark, New Jersey. The name of the case is derived from the street where the 5 teenagers were last seen. The boys were identified as Melvin Pittman, 17, Ernest Taylor, 17, Alvin Turner, 16, Randy Johnson, 16, and Michael McDowell, 16. In November 2008, Philander Hampton, while in police custody on an unrelated charge, confessed to involvement in murdering the boys after a 13-hour interrogation. He stated that he and his cousin, local contractor Lee Anthony Evans, had lured the teenagers to his former Newark residence on Camden Street with the promise of employment. Evans, angry at the boys for stealing marijuana from his home, had Hampton hold 2 of them at gunpoint while he rounded up the other 3. The boys were led to a 3rd-floor bedroom closet at gunpoint and locked in. Evans then set the house on fire with 5 gallons of gasoline, and all 5 boys perished. Hampton led investigators to the site of the fire, but human remains were not found using sonar equipment. In March 2010, Evans and Hampton were arrested and charged with felony murder and arson, each held on $5 million bail at the Essex County Jail. However, Judge Peter Vasquez lowered Evans' bail to $950,000, and his family posted this amount in the form of 3 pieces of property. Evans was released from jail on August 20, 2010, the 32nd anniversary of the murders. Hampton pleaded guilty to the murders at his August 2011 trial and was sentenced to 10 years in prison, plus $15,000 in relocation expenses upon his release. He was released from custody on February 27, 2017. Evans represented himself at his November 2011 trial and was acquitted, officially closing the 33-year-old cold case. In September 2011, Floria Turner McDowell, mother of victim Alvin Turner, had her son declared dead and filed a wrongful death suit against Evans and Hampton 2 months later. Additionally, a 3rd man, Morris Woody Olds, has also been considered a suspect in the case, and all 3 suspects are cousins. Woody Olds died of natural causes in 2008. In November 2013, Evans filed a lawsuit against the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, the Newark Police Department, and United States Senator Cory Booker, claiming he was the victim of malicious prosecution, and that his arrest was a political conspiracy to get then-Mayor Booker elected to a 2nd term in office. State and city officials filed motions on January 22, 2015, to dismiss the complaint, stating that Evans had not provided a factual basis to conclude that any of the ECPO defendants had deprived him of his constitutional rights. Despite the acquittal of Evans and guilty plea of Hampton, the remains of the 5 boys have not been found to date. The strange death of Mary Jane Baker. On Monday, February 25, 1957, at approximately 10:30 a.m., Barker disappeared in Belmore along with a 4-month-old black spaniel puppy. The child was last seen playing in a nearby yard and was on her way to meet with her neighbor and friend, 6-year-old Maria Freita, the owner of the dog. The police were notified by 1:30 p.m. that day, and it was presumed that Barker had been kidnapped. On the following day, footprints were found along a nearby stream bank, which appeared to belong to a man, child, and dog. The small footprints on the mud matched the size of Barker's shoes, as confirmed by the police. Barker's disappearance initiated an extensive search for a kidnapper or murderer, which was dubbed the largest search in South Jersey by the Philadelphia Inquirer. Hundreds of volunteers and police officers were involved in searching the city, with more than 200 civilians conducting a foot-by-foot search on the first night. Her fourth birthday came and went with no sign of her. On Wednesday, February 27th, Barker's parents made an appeal on television to anyone who may have kidnapped their daughter, urging them to leave the child in the nearest church. A 43-year-old floor sander and convicted child molester, Vern Lovering, had been questioned by the police, who later conducted their own search on Thursday, February 28th. The FBI was called in on Saturday, March 2nd, following the provisions of the Federal Kidnapping Act, and several nearby dumps were searched, but to no avail. On Sunday, March 3rd, Maria Freita and her mother went to a vacant, newly built ranch house next door to their home, owned by her aunt and uncle, Mr. and Mrs. Pat Vecchi. Maria managed to open a small bedroom closet's door, and her missing dog bounded out of the closet and leapt happily at her. However, also in the closet was Barker, dead in a seated position, with the hood of her blue coat partially covering her blonde hair. She was found in the same clothes she had on when she disappeared, and bits of fur from her hat were rubbed off. The police chief believed that Barker had recently been placed in the closet as the puppy had been fed recently, and there was no animal waste in the closet, despite the dog not being housebroken. The bedroom closet where Barker's body was found had not been searched during previous searches, and although a repairman and a volunteer fireman had both searched the bedroom, neither had searched the closet. Rev. Harry McIntyre had looked in bedroom closets on February 26th, but had not thought to search the front bedroom closet. The lock on the closet door, although unlocked, had a thumb screw inside that apparently made it difficult for a child to open, and the door had only a small turn latch on the inside. On March 4th, following the discovery of her body, an autopsy was conducted on Barker. The examination revealed that she had consumed nothing since drinking chocolate milk the morning she disappeared, and had not eaten since her disappearance. There were no signs of foul play, violence, or sexual molestation. Despite having lived in the closet for 3 days without food or drink, there was no indication of physical abuse or assault, and inspection of the closet revealed marks indicating that she had attempted to escape. The dog that Barker had been playing with at the time of her disappearance was found alive and well in the closet with her. While the initial assumption was that the dog had not been there for long, subsequent examination revealed that it had been without food or water since Barker's disappearance. The dog was euthanized to allow further examination of its stomach contents, which could provide insight into the circumstances of Barker's death. The coroner, Robert J. Blake, ruled Barker's death an accident, concluding that she became trapped in the closet and died of starvation and exposure. The coroner's spokesman stated that Barker likely died of fright and starvation, as she could not have suffocated due to a hole in the closet. The abduction of Margaret Ellen Fox. Margaret Ellen Maggie Fox was a 14-year-old American girl who disappeared under suspicious circumstances in Burlington, New Jersey in 1974. On June 24, 1974, Fox arranged to meet with a man named John Marshall regarding a babysitting job she had advertised. Despite several postponements, Marshall finally agreed to meet her at a specific location in a red Volkswagen. Fox took a bus to Mount Holly, and witnesses reported seeing her near Mill and High Streets after she arrived. However, she has not been seen since. After Fox was reported missing, authorities started to record all phone calls that went to and from the Fox residence. One of the calls was from a man who demanded a $10,000 ransom for her safe return and threatened her life. Despite efforts, the caller has never been identified. Investigation revealed that John Marshall had given Fox a phone number prior to her disappearance, which was traced to a phone booth at a supermarket in Lumberton. Authorities immediately suspected that the circumstances surrounding Fox's disappearance were suspicious in nature and believed that she had been abducted. In 1976, a suspect confessed to involvement in her disappearance, but it turned out to be false. John Marshall has never been identified, and efforts to solve the case have been ongoing. The Burlington City Police Department and the FBI have reevaluated their efforts to find Fox and her abductor, and the audio recording of the ransom call has been uploaded to the FBI website in an effort to solicit new leads. In 2017, a retired police officer entered into a partnership with the Burlington PD to review and hopefully solve the case. A $25,000 reward is being offered for information leading to the arrests of Fox's abductor S. But no arrests have been made to date. The case remains open, and authorities continue to investigate in hopes of finding justice for Margaret Ellen Fox. The cases we've explored today are a haunting reminder that the world is often a dangerous and unpredictable place. Though these particular cases may never be solved, we can honor the memory of the victims by continuing to investigate and shed light on the circumstances surrounding their death. We must also remember that there are many other victims out there, and we must never forget the importance of pursuing justice on their behalf. Let us all remain vigilant and continue to work towards a world where such crimes are not only solved, but prevented from happening in the first place. Thank you for watching, and until next time, farewell.